Hi, this is Scott Bradfield in the highly imperfect series of talks entitled Reading Great Books in the Bathtub, where I still haven't figured out how to stop the screen from blacking out. This is why I'm always fiddling with this stupid thing, so I stop the screen from going into screensaver mode. That's how technically proficient we are here at the bathtub. I'm changing the parameters of the talk today to reading and writing in the bathtub. I don't want to be presumptuous and say I'm writing great books in the bathtub, but every day when I'm reading, I'm also writing. That's sort of what I do. That's my life. That's why I have time to post these videos of mild interest to a few people. And I'm mainly a writer. So let me say this is the all Misty edition. Misty, there you go. This is the all Misty edition. I got to keep her out of the picture because she's more interesting than I am. So what I want to talk a bit about today was my own work, which I don't normally ever do. But one of the things you learn as a writer is, and this is be presumptuous, but I am a writer. I've been doing it all my life, whether anyone likes it or not. And the one thing I've learned is that you develop certain routines and ways of doing your work. I think this is true in any art or any profession. And if you stay with those routines, you kind of lose it. You kind of lose energy. I certainly do. So every time I write a book or a story, I'm always looking for that different way into the material and trying something slightly different, because otherwise I just redo what I've done in the past. That's a long way of saying that I'm talking about something I'm working on, which I've never done in the past. In the past, I really believe I never showed my work to anyone unless I had a complete draft and it was almost done and I knew where everything was going. And then I might start showing it to people, because I do feel there's a certain importance in kind of keeping the material with yourself until you know where it's going. I'm doing something different at the moment, and I'm writing a series, an episodic novel on Facebook, because Facebook's the only social media I know how to work. I'm sorry, because I understand why people hate Facebook, believe me. But it's the only one I know how to work. So I've started writing a novel. It's called 3 Paragraphs in the Life of Bob Johnson. And I wanted to talk a little bit about it today and ask you and encourage you to go check it out. And if you enjoy it, follow along. The gimmick is I've sort of painted myself into a corner, which is where I have to write an episode or 2, hopefully every day. I won't probably make every day. But to write an episode every day in this sort of a wide perspective novel with lots of different characters and proliferating characters. But it's all sort of set in the Central Coast, where we now live in San Luis, but we move around the world. So we go to London and we'll go to various countries along the way, but mainly it's set on the Central Coast. The inspiration for the book, and I don't believe in inspiration, but I do believe in painting yourself into the corner. And the way I got myself painted into the corner on this book is I used to do an exercise from my creative writing courses, which was called the 3-paragraph short story. Now I came up with this idea, and I may have heard it somewhere, so I'm not saying it was my idea, but I just started to develop it when I did an online course in short story writing. And the premise of this little tiny exercise was to get people to think about how a story begins, develops, and concludes. And it was a very simple premise. So I was really basically trying to get my students to think of how do you write a nice opening paragraph, and you only have so much space. So you can't have 12 people in it, you can't have backstory, and you can't have 3 or 4 different sub-narratives. You have to just have a good, simple setup that gives us the basics of who we are, where we are, and what's happening, and the story starts. Now, that was a perfectly, I thought, sensible idea for an exercise. And then once people had the first paragraph, they would send it in to me, and almost everyone would do the wrong thing. I wasn't trying to trap anybody, but almost everybody would describe lots of things happening, because they felt that lots of things happening was what stories were about. So I would try to trim the story down and try to cut it down until we had a nice opening, and then I would say, okay, now what's the next thing that happens? And I would take them through the revision process to recognize how little you can do in a story and how much you can do with just 3 paragraphs. I also demanded that they realize what a paragraph is in narrative. And in fiction and in short stories, paragraphs aren't thesis paragraphs, which is what they bore you the crap out of you in school with. They aren't thesis. That's what most of my students were writing. They're writing big, long, complicated paragraphs. The moment the story happens. Hello, Bob said. That's an opening paragraph of a story. Hello, Bob said, period. Opening paragraph. Now, it limits the story. You can develop that hello, Bob said. You can describe what he looks like when he said it. You can describe where we are. There's a few things you can do to embellish that opening paragraph, but you can't throw in, all the other people and blah, 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 and this happened, this is where Bob comes from, this is what his mother did for a living, and blah, blah. Okay, so that's the setup was I had this idea, and I thought it worked pretty well. I liked it. The students were very frustrated because I thought I was tricking them all the time. But basically, I would take what they gave me and try to cut it down to one moment, and then try to show them different ways they could use that moment. Many got frustrated because they thought I was tearing their story apart. Even though this is an exercise, they just got so wound up about it. So I always had 2 or 3 students every term just having fits, calling the university, calling the school and complaining, and he's lying, tricking me, and and it was an exercise. I would repeatedly say, we're just trying to do an exercise for a little fun. Okay. The fun faded for me, and I hardly ever do this exercise anymore because there was always that 2 idiots in my class who most people would have a difficulty and they would just kind of go with it and have a little fun, and they would get frustrated and we'd have some jokes about it. But 2 or 3 people would just, oh God, this is not telling me how to write, and I was just trying to get them to recognize limitations. So having done that, and having worked all these years, for 2 or 3 years, trying to show them different ways you could actually make something nice out of 3 paragraphs, I started to develop a fondness for the form of the 3-paragraph short story. And for no other reason than I thought that some of these stories, ones that I had written and ones I'd helped them write and ones that they'd written themselves, had a real beauty to them. They were concise, they were succinct, they fulfilled the opening paragraph and they concluded, and they didn't take a lot of brain power. Short stories don't take a lot of planning. They need a respect for the form of beginning, middle, end. So, when I decided I was never doing this again, and I stopped teaching for the place I was teaching at, it was just 2 or 3 students. Most of my students were wonderful. I started writing my own 3-paragraph stories on Facebook just for fun. And I do a few a week and here and there, and then slowly a character started to emerge named Bob Johnson, who's kind of a loser, who's never quite got his life together. I mean, I feel I have my life together to some extent, but he's the Bob Johnson in I think many of us. And I started to think about the different characters, and I was just sort of having fun with it. It's everything I look for in a story, which is it started to establish its own universe. It's a very Marx Brother type series of stories, very, very over the top, very kind of comic, but there's a consistency, I hope, with the characters and the narrative. So that's really it. I'm producing or publishing on Facebook these 2 each day. It's under 3. I'll put a link on below. I thought I would give you a couple of simple examples here. As usual, I forgot my glasses. Let me show a couple really simple ones, because at the beginning of the book, the paragraphs are much simpler, and I'm doing what I really ask my students to do. Open moment of time, what happens after that opening moment, and how does it conclude? The 3 things I could not get many of my students to do. So, for example, here's one of the early ones. It's called Blatant Disregard of Affection. On what turned out to be not one of Bob Johnson's best days, he baked and ate a red-throated hummingbird for lunch. It was chewier than he expected and saltier. He shared the secret with nobody but us. Now, that took about 3 or 4 minutes to write. The most important part of the story is that opening. So again, I'm not expecting you to like these. I'm not trying to say these are the greatest works of fiction of all time, but I like them. It opens with a moment and a narrative idea, eating a hummingbird. The second one is the reaction he has to eating the hummingbird. That's the most obvious thing to do. And instead of explaining and giving lots of exposition, it was chewier than he expected and saltier. It just has reaction. These are the normal things we do in fiction. he shared the secret with nobody but us. So after that's over, he doesn't share the secret, but he tells, quote, us, and us comes out of nowhere. And it's sort of I like the little twist that it kind of, the end of a story brings us somewhere a little bit unusual, which is that we are involved in this kind of macabre scene. I don't want to analyze that story, but it's not analyzing it. It's just something, recognizing certain basic patterns of stories. We want to end somewhere different. That's all it is. So that's one of the characters. Bob's the main central character. I've tried to change the form in each story. So it's 300 stories, and each story is 3 paragraphs. Now, as this book develops, I'm doing a lot of things with the paragraphs, which you can do with paragraphs, and you can shape and generate paragraphs in ways that aren't just the simple 1, 2, 3 formula, and a lot more can happen in them. But you really need to start to recognize the basics first, and then you can kind of move on. So I try to change the form in each 3-paragraph story. Here's one I liked a lot. It's called, these are 3-paragraph stories. Chapter 22 is Bob expresses his desire to become a more productive citizen. Dear America. That's the first paragraph. Second paragraph. You probably don't know me. I just work here. I don't like to draw attention to myself. I avoid parties. I'm not very smart. I went to a community college. I watch too much cable TV. I like baseball more than football. Once I met Ted Danson at a Dodgers game. I've been divorced. Many times, actually. Maybe even several. I can't quite recall. I think of you often. I don't know what else to say. I wish I was clever. If there's anything I can do to help, please don't hesitate to call. Even though my phone service was recently disconnected or it's being monitored by a third party, that's another thing I'm not entirely sure about. I'm accessible by email. I'm reasonably easy to contact. That might change at any moment. I'm just doing my best for my end. That's all I'm trying to say. The ball's in your court. Good luck with all your ambitious enterprises. Love, Bob Johnson. And that's the 3rd paragraph. So, there's a sequel to it, actually. It's called Unrequited. I'll read the sequel. After several months, Bob Johnson received a handwritten reply from America. It said, Dear Bob Johnson, please stop writing me. Best wishes, America. He had it laminated and hung it in an obvious place on his living room wall where it remained quite unspectacularly until the day of, the earthquake. So the stories are trying to use basic narrative techniques and not do what I see in flash fiction. I'm not a flash fiction fan, and I don't read much of it, and what I read of it I think is terrible, which is just a bunch of ideas kind of jammed together. Trying to use all the basic techniques of setting up time, dialogue, introducing characters, developing a situation. And as the stories go along, they get more complicated, and they get more interesting to me as a writer, and that's why I'm sort of enjoying this whole enterprise. There is an occasional appearance from Donald Trump, who tweets great novels in his limited understanding. So Donald Trump does some. The ones that make me laugh the most are Donald Trump tweeting freeze-dried classics. He does Madame Bovary, I'll do you Madame Bovary. This is Donald Trump's version of Madame Bovary. Emma What's-Her-Face wasn't a very nice person. She cheated on her husband. She never cooked decent meals or did any cleaning, which was, of course, her job. She wasted all their hard-earned money on fancy clothes, even when her husband was a medium-wage income earner, which wasn't fair. ... So, of course, things caught up with her. All her debts fell due. She didn't have a good bankruptcy lawyer, unlike me. I have a great bankruptcy lawyer, and I don't lend my money to Jewish people who will try to screw me big time. Not that I don't like Jewish people. Just look at my daughter and that Kushner guy. But then come to think of it, I wouldn't borrow money from them either. Because as everyone knows who knows me knows, I'm always thinking, hello. He sounds like an old grandma, that guy. So Emma What's-Her-Face, i.e. Big Loser, took poison and died horribly. Everybody cried. Not me. Don't say I didn't warn her. The end. I enjoy it. So the story goes on. Lots of things happen. Bob's dog leaves him, and she goes off to pursue her own independent life, where she actually develops leukemia. John Bolton has become a significant character because he's not the real John Bolton, not the real National Security Advisor John Bolton, but someone who acts like National Security Advisor John Bolton, has the same name in a fictional universe. So it's not the same guy. It's just a John Bolton who's very disappointed when two of the aliens in the book, named Sam and Dave, promise they're going to anally probe him, and they don't. He's pretty upset about that. Actually, they don't say they're going to do it. He kind of hopes that they're going to do it when he meets a couple of aliens. Now, I thought I would close here. The stories, the sections are getting, there are a lot more characters coming along. The premise of the book, like the premise of writing any novel or story, is just to get through it, get through the first draft, and try to have some fun while you're doing it. And that's all I'm hoping to do with it. And doing what, as I said, putting it online, putting it out there for people to look at. If they're interested, if they want to follow along, great. If they don't, I understand. And if you don't like it, please don't tell me. I just don't want to hear it. If you don't like it, that's your, go do whatever you like to do. You don't have to like it. That's why I don't take creative writing courses. I don't want to hear people who don't like my stuff. So anyway, I'll read this. This is the last thing I'll read. And this is the, I did most of the first 120 chapters were done on a page I'd set up called Ultimate Beginners, which is for my students. I do a lot of online teaching and some old students who we all kind of keep in touch. And I felt I was monopolizing that stage. So I've now set up this private web page, 3 paragraphs in the life of Bob Johnson. And the first day of that page, I wrote a summary. And I think I'll close on the summary, which kind of leads you up to what's happening now. And all the rest is available on the page. Chapter 120, our story so far in 3 paragraphs in the life of Bob Johnson, in 3 paragraphs, obviously. Nobody likes Bob Johnson. Bob's not that wild about himself. Bob has rarely, if ever, ventured far outside the borders of San Luis Obispo County. It's not just that other counties want nothing to do with Bob. It's more a matter of burning the bridges you know before you get around to burning the bridges you don't. It saves on gas. Bob's dog has left him. Several wives and ex-wives have left him. Even his parents have left him, and that was long before they ever had a chance to get to know him. Bob's grandparents haven't left him, but they have left each other, which makes Thanksgiving especially worrisome for Bob. Other holidays, not so worrisome. Bob either sleeps through them or forgets to mark them on his calendar, and Bob, as we all know, doesn't keep a calendar. Many unremarkable things have happened to Bob in the course of his life, and most of them have been unfairly disregarded by this literary exploration of his life and times. Aliens have landed in Truckee, and for several decades have been completing a survey of human opinions about issues of no importance. Groups of people, or groups of people and dogs, or groups of just dogs, are seeking better ways to communicate with one another. Everybody can afford a visit with their favorite therapist, Dr. Tiny Aguilera, but they can't afford anything that has to do with dental hygiene, unless it means visiting Dr. Siang the Merciless, DDS, or the head physician at the Senior Assisted Living Facility, Dr. Weinstein, no relation. National Security Advisor John Bolton will never forget the romance of his life, Scintilla Jones, or her chromium blue disability scooter. And the world around everybody keeps getting hotter, darker, smokier, and more dangerous. There's a lot at stake in 3 paragraphs in the life of Bob Johnson. That's all I'm trying to tell you. Ignore it at your peril. And please pay better attention from now on. We're never doing one of these boring recaps ever again. And I'll close on that. I mean, the part I'm enjoying about the book, to toot my own horn, just again, for something I'm enjoying, is that the book is just for fun. In a world I think is just sinking into the ocean, and it's kind of depressing, almost getting up every day. And the book makes me laugh, and it feels like it doesn't leave our concerns behind, but try to have a little fun in the midst of them. And then the rest of the day we can go through it. That's what books are about. Try to enjoy life in the midst of the crap, and we have a lot of it these days. So I hope you try it. Give it a try. It's I'll put the link down below. You have to be on Facebook, but it should be open to anybody. Don't tell me if you don't like it. I don't care. And if one last important thing I was going to say, I'll put the page on here so you can see it, and it'll be running one or two a day, I hope, over the future. Okay. All right. Go have a good time reading, and if you want to read mine in the bathtub, you can. But we're going to do another book in a minute. I'm going to do something other than myself. Okay. Thanks a lot. Give it a shot.